votes, but it was the role that racial discrimination played in voting rights. So, is America a democracy? It's a country that's learning how to be a democracy, but it's not there yet. I wanted to make sure that my daughter would become a citizen of a democracy who's really engaged and not taking that democracy for granted.
Democracy in the ideal should definitely be one person, one vote. In a simple way, democracy is self-governing, right? People choosing their own leaders, people being able to govern themselves. But we're finding out that democracy requires equality. With the development of technology and the development of a global system, it's becoming much clearer how unequal we are and how far we are from the values that we claim to have. It's important to think about when we set that intention, right? When we called ourselves a democracy. And I think we spend the rest of our existence as a country trying to get there.
Another song with the hope that the president's brought us another song when inspiration that the future will provide us. Let the fire not expire but ignite its cause. Yes, the black survivors.
I have spent a lot of time thinking and writing about the interwar period in Europe. I never imagined that studying the interwar period would have a lot to teach me about what was going on in my own country. I hadn't thought very carefully about how fragile democracy was, how much it took to make it work, and how easily people could forget how valuable democracy was. Democracy originally, the term, comes from the Greek rule by the people. So on some basic level, this idea of rule by the people is quite ancient. So on the most basic level, democracy means that people have the right to choose their leaders and governments in free and fair elections.
Now that sounds very simple, but in order to have truly free and fair elections, first of all, you have to have freedom to organize politically, to campaign around the country, to run for office. You have to have freedom to vote. That means all different groups in the country have to have, at a minimum, the franchise, the right to vote and the right to contest for office. I think democracy stems from the innate desire of human beings for dignity, for respect.
One person, one vote. That citizens have political equality. And of course, in the United States, as in many other parts of the world, that remains an ideal, but not a reality.
I do not think that the election system in this country is fair. I think that there are so many problems with the way that we do elections, and it's extremely inaccessible. We do not have universal voter registration like many democracies do. So there are so many steps between an eligible voter and actually voting. The rate of voting in this country is low, and that's a direct consequence of an overly convoluted registration process. You register online, you register by mail. For example, in Texas, you have to be deputized. These are all things that stand in the way of people voting. So our elections can't possibly be fair. They aren't actually representative of the American people. First and foremost, not everyone has the right to vote. And of course, that disproportionately affects people of color. That's why Trump won, because we haven't done anything about racism in this country.
Oh, it's a question we often ask ourselves. How did the U.S. get to that point?
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton.
When Donald Trump emerged on the scene as a presidential candidate in 2015, I thought it was political theater, and really theater of the absurd.
I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
He gained more momentum and was able to win the Republican nomination in a divided field.
I'm asking for the vote of every African-American citizen struggling in our country today who wants a different and much better future.
And I told my friends around the world, don't worry about it. It was an unlikely event, like a once-in-a-century storm.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
So November 8th, 2016 was one of the most shocking and alarming nights of my life. I was worried for American democracy, and I was worried for democracy around the world. The combination of the 2008 recession, it had hurt working class incomes in the United States a lot. Stagnated for the last 2 to 3 decades while the very rich were becoming ever richer. Much of the middle class, the traditional white working class, felt threatened as well by social change, by immigration, the movement of racial equality, and there's just so much social change happening that a lot of people felt their world was being turned upside down, and the way that has been manipulated by populists like Donald Trump playing on racial anxieties and divisions. It was a very, very volatile mix.
We are returning power to you, the American people. I've got more Indian blood in me than you do, and I have none.
I deal with a number of organizations that are referred to as patriot organizations. I'm the president of New York Oath Keepers. We expect people to live up to that definition of honoring their oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My background is that I've been in war. I was in Vietnam. The reality is that you learn things in war that you can't learn anywhere else. People wonder what a patriot is. It's someone who loves their country and wants the best for it. And there are many people who believe that there are factions within the United States who don't want that.
It seems like our country has moved away from being a Christian Judeo-based country to wanting to be a socialist country. My biggest fear for America is the decline of America moving too far to the left. Joe Biden, I don't believe he's a moderate left. I believe he's going far left so that the people can be more and more dependent on the government for everything. If you don't have a job, we're going to give you money. But the ideology of the right side is that capitalist society. It gives everybody an opportunity to be rich. My parents came from Puerto Rico. Both of them came from Puerto Rico. I've worked hard for what I have. I went to school, I studied, but look at me, where I am. We need immigration. We need to bring people into this country. We have to, but we can't have uncontrolled immigration. Uncontrolled immigration will lead to a disaster. We'll lose our country.
We will have strong borders, and we will have the wall, and Mexico will pay for the wall. Mexico will pay for the wall.
got to be thankful for Donald Trump. He exposed America for what it really is. He showed you that 70 million people in this country are racist, evil, hateful people. They raided houses of our Mexican brothers and sisters. We protested for that. I was arrested for that. Police beat me up. They damaged my spine. America expects us to protest peacefully. Meanwhile, this country was founded on bloodshed.
Familiar with this music?
Moneybag Yo?
Yeah, but it's a song called Brain Dead.
Uh-huh. It's fire.
Yeah. And very stressful.
There was a lot of painful moments in the Trump presidency. He did a lot of evil things to people. Well, actually, he said it out, was guilty of treason, insurrection, and sedition. And after he did that, the following week, I received over 1,000 death threats. I get text messages every day saying, "We're coming to kill you. Don't come to my town. Lynch, we're gonna hang you, we're gonna lynch you." So people put threats on my life, serious threats.
Where are you going?
When that happened, I was like, okay, I graduated. I graduated. The President of the United States of America heard my words and thought I should be put to death. Part of me said, I'm doing something right. He put a target on my back.
Very easy. I got that. Press this button in. Now you just load it. Keep the eye closed.
Okay.
Your right eye's looking through just for your sight. For the top of your front sight. Top of your front sight. On target.
If they want to kill you, then you're doing the job. You're doing the work of liberation. So we wear the bulletproof vest. We learn how to fight. We learn how to shoot. We'll have weapons to defend ourselves. But this is just what it is. When you step out there and put your life on the line for black people, you're looking America in the eye and saying, I'm ready to die.
Race continues to be the single most powerful and enduring dividing force in American politics. We all know this is the original sin of American democracy, is slavery.
It was incredible that America at its beginning was able to say all men are created equal while having a significant enslaved population. When America started, only white men with property could vote. And America has been struggling since that time with the ideals that are written down in our documents. All men are created equal. My dream is that people like my daughter, the young people, just have a full voice and don't feel targeted because of their race or ethnicity.
I think about how much has changed since then with the kind of things that Martin Luther King was facing and John Lewis at that time. But at the same time, you have to think about how much still hasn't changed. We still, like, we were celebrating the 50-something memorial, but we still were talking about the same thing, just different versions of it, I guess. But those fundamental issues haven't really changed.
You have to be vigilant because it just, if you don't pay attention, you go right back to those times.
And I think that's really my fear as you move forward, because now we have a new president, but I don't want that to mean that we stop trying, that we stop working, because that's exactly how it'll come right back around.
Whenever you go backwards, the arc, when you fight for progress, the arc goes a little more ahead. So you are going forward, but you also have to fight about going back, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to think about, because especially when you think about how much really hasn't changed, it's easy to feel defeated, feel like it's pointless. But I think every activist has to try to address that for themselves, knowing that you will work your entire life and nothing will really change. But you just think about what would happen if nobody did anything.
Exactly.
The leaders of the G7 countries will gather soon at a summit in Canada with many new faces, a global trade war and tariffs as a backdrop. Will the host nation be able to unite the partners in tackling their common challenges? Join us as we assess the outcome of the G7 Leaders Summit on Al Jazeera.
Hello, I'm Rob Matheson. This is the News Hour live from Doha. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, Iran warns of a strong response if the Global Atomic Agency passes a sensitive resolution on its nuclear program. And it comes as another round of nuclear talks between Iran and the U.S. is due on Sunday. Washington's pulling some personnel out of the Middle East, citing heightened regional tensions. Food centers become death traps in Gaza. More Palestinians are killed overnight as Israeli forces attack people trying to reach distribution sites backed by Israel and the U.S. Mass arrests in Los Angeles as protesters rally for a sixth night despite a curfew in parts of the city. And Seoul says North Korea appears to have stopped broadcasting from loudspeakers along the border, a day after South Korea's new government did the same.
I'm Gemma Nash with the sport. The Indiana Pacers fight back against Oklahoma City Thunder to take a 2-1 series lead in the finals. The Pacers winning 116-107 as they chase a historic first NBA
on June 8th
championship
at about
title.
10:15 p.m. Mitchell was double parked near 90th Street in the 600 block of South Broadway. It was allegedly being looted by a group of people.
In the next hour, the
Paul
UN
was
nuclear
accused of
watchdog is
stealing
expected to
multiple
vote
items
on
from
a
that
resolution which
store
accuses
and getting into
Iran
the car
of not
driven by
complying with its
Mitchell.
obligations
They
towards
fled,
nuclear
but they were arrested
safeguards.
a short
The
time.
International Atomic Energy Agency is meeting in Vienna, and it's raised concerns about Tehran's increased uranium enrichment program. A resolution to censure Tehran is being pushed by France, Germany, and the UK. Iran has called it a strategic mistake and is warning it'll introduce countermeasures if the resolution is adopted. Iran is also facing pressure from the US, which wants an agreement that puts constraints on Tehran's uranium enrichment in return for sanctions relief. Iran maintains that its program is peaceful.
We have announced that the Supreme Leader has a belief that we should not build nuclear weapons. So we've always told them, come and evaluate it however you want. We will not build a nuclear bomb. Come and evaluate. They keep saying we want to come and check if you're building a bomb. We are not.
Tawhid Asadi standing by in Tehran. First, we're going to speak to Hashim Akhabara, who's following developments at the IAEA headquarters in Vienna. Hashim, do we have any idea how this vote is going to go?
Yes, the room that you can see behind me is where the Board of Governors is going to meet in about 30 minutes from now. They will listen to the final statement by Iran's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, and then they will pass the vote. I spoke yesterday with senior members of Western European delegations attending the Board of Governors, and they said, yes, we're passing the resolution. Yes, the resolution is going to state clearly, unequivocally, that Iran is not complying with its obligations when it comes to the CSA, which is the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement that was signed between both Iran and the IAEA in 2003. A remarkable development, because this is going to be the first time in 20 years that the nuclear watchdog is going to consider and that Iran is not complying, which is a significant diplomatic development. And let me just break down why they are very much concerned here at the agency, Rob. They say that while they were conducting inspections, they discovered man-made traces of uranium in 3 undeclared sites: Lavistan, Maravin, and Norvan. And then when they spoke with the Iranians and they said, you should have been forthcoming telling us the details of what is happening here. And then they said that they saw that the Iranians were intentionally trying to destroy any evidence on those sites. Then the IAEA says that it discovered also particles in Turkus Abad, another undeclared site. And they insist, we want the Iranians to tell us where is the nuclear material that was there or the contaminated equipment. We're not going to move forward until we get clarity. And when I asked someone yesterday, have you been convinced by the letters that you've received from the Iranians? And he said, no. And this explains why today we decided to move forward with sending one of the strongest resolutions ever as far as Iran is concerned. I spoke with another senior Western European member who is attending this Board of Governors, and he said the Iranians should seriously take this into consideration because it means we're giving them the last chance to come up this time by allowing thorough inspection into many, many sites inside Iran. Number 2, we need clear answers, corroborated with strong evidence about the contaminated material that has disappeared. Last thing here, Bob, from a Western European perspective and nuclear experts, they say Iran is now the only non-nuclear state which has 400 kilograms of enriched uranium at a purity of 60%. If they decide tomorrow to refine it to 90%, it's not going to take them more than 2-3 months. And then if they decide to design the head of the weapons along with the triggers and the explosive devices, put them together, they will be able to have 10 nuclear bombs within less than a year. And this explains why there is a great deal of anxiety here in Vienna, and this explains why they're saying today is going to be totally different, and the Iranians have to be held accountable, and that they are in breach of all significant commitments that they have made with the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Hashim, I know you and the team are going to be sitting across that vote when it happens. For now, Hashim Al-Khabara in Vienna, thank you very much indeed. We're going to bring in Toker Dasari. He's live for us in Tehran. So the IAEA demanding that there is greater clarity from Iran with regard to its nuclear program and much broader access. What is Tehran's response to the allegations?
Obviously, this is going to be a critically important development if that resolution is passed, and it seems that it's going to be passed in the next hour. So there is going to be a reaction from Iran. But so far, after the IAEA was published a couple of days ago, 12 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, we have heard a lot of reactions, a lot of statements from Iranian officials, including the Foreign Ministry, the Speaker of the Parliament, the President, the members of Parliament, as well as the head and the spokesperson of the Iran's atomic organization. All in all, we've got at least 4 important lines when it comes to Iran's reaction. First of all, they are, denying the allegations directed by IAEA report towards the nuclear program of the country, calling it on the basis of fabricated, baseless documents. And also, they're saying that the United States and their Western partners should be criticized because of their lack and violation of obligations based upon the previous deal. And what Iran says in this regard is saying that the courses of action, including the increasing of enrichment, relates to stepping back from the previous deal, not withdrawing from it. And that was the United States had decided to unilaterally withdraw, paving the way for further contractions by the Iranian side. Also, what is even more important, I think, is the fact that Iranians, specifically the Deputy Foreign Minister of the country, Kazem Gharibabadi, came out yesterday saying that there are countermeasures already planned if this resolution is going to be passed, and Iran is going to immediately implement them. It's specifically when it comes to field and technical aspects. So we can anticipate that for the next round of, reactions, countermeasures coming from Iran, we might not see necessarily a diplomatic reaction, but also a sort of technical reaction when it comes to nuclear facilities of the country that could be putting a limitation on the inspection of IAEA. We know that right now Tehran is saying that the entire program of the country is under full inspection of IAEA, but they might decide to step back from it. But still, we're not sure whether there are going to be other actions down the road in case this resolution is adopted. The tone here, the tone that we hear from different Iranian officials seem to be very harsh, so we are anticipating tough responses. And also, one last point in this regard is that Iran is still putting emphasis on the idea of peaceful nature of its nuclear program, saying that we're not moving beyond that. That was what the president said yesterday, that we're not planning to build any nuclear weapons, but still we have no decision to be made when it comes to the nuclear peaceful program, which is a red line in Tehran, and they have decided not to step back when it comes to this regard. But still, we know that this round of talks between Iran and the United States, which is expected to be on Sunday, is going to be highly influenced by this resolution if adopted, and other trajectories of Iran's diplomatic affairs, including the talks with Europeans, is also a subject matter that could be highly influenced based upon the recent developments. We know that Iran is negotiating not necessarily for the sake of its nuclear issue, but for the sake of sanctions to be lifted. And if this resolution is adopted, there's going to be a possibility of triggering of a snapback mechanism, which means that United Nations Security Council sanctions are going to be reimposed, and there's further and further and further sanctions for Iranians, something that Tehran is not interested at all.
Todd, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, with that vote, as Hashim was mentioning, is going to happen in the next hour or so. We will be covering it when it comes in. For now, Tawhid Asadi, thank you very much indeed. Well, the U.S. is evacuating non-essential staff from its embassy in Iraq. Officials are not saying exactly what prompted the move, but the State Department says it is due to, quote, heightened regional tensions. The decision comes ahead of a sixth round of talks between the U.S. and Iran on Tehran's nuclear program, as Tawhid was just talking about. President Trump says he's less confident about the prospects of a deal.
They are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. But they are we've given notice to move out, and we'll see what happens.
Is there anything that can be done to dial the temperature down in the region?
They can't have a nuclear weapon. Very simply. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
Alan Fisher's got more from Washington, D.C.
Happened here. Effectively, the U.S. has said that non-essential personnel are going to be evacuated from the embassy in Baghdad. They'll leave a military presence, obviously, and a diplomatic presence, but everyone else is getting out of the country. And they're saying that non-essential staff in other embassies around the region, the likes of Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, well, they can leave if they want. Arrangements will be made. If we go back to Monday, Donald Trump effectively diverted his flight back to Washington from New York. David, there he
partnership and unwavering support during these challenging times. The Los Angeles Police Department recognizes and supports the right to peaceful protest, but when individuals choose to weaponize that right, by assaulting peace officers, endangering lives, or committing crimes under the cover of a crowd that is no longer a protest, that is a crime and it won't be tolerated. 3 individuals have been charged with felony assault on our officers, including the use of fireworks and motorcycles to cause harm. These were deliberate attacks, acts that injured officers who were simply doing their job out there to protect the public. Let's not forget our officers face uncertain and often dangerous situations every day, and their risk to their lives has been even greater over these last few days. I've watched Molotov cocktails and fireworks shot mortars being launched out of tubes at our officers. They're encountering routinely M-type fireworks and commercial-grade fireworks, which in the state of California are considered explosives, and they can kill. Our officers should never have to face targeted violence while standing on a line to protect others. I want to thank the district attorney for pursuing felony charges in these
clear
cases.
details
It sends a strong
in regard
and
to
important
this
message.
issue.
If you
On the
assault a
contrary,
peace officer in
they
this
say
city
that
or this county, you will be held accountable. Additionally, I'm also pleased that there are charges related to looting and vandalism, crimes that took advantage of the unrest to target businesses and city property. In one case, a retail store was burglarized and tens of thousands of dollars in merchandise were stolen. And another, graffiti was sprayed onto a historic public building while an accomplice stood watch. These crimes don't advance any cause or further any message. What they do is harm to our communities, our small businesses, and our civic institutions. The LAPD will continue to investigate all incidents thoroughly and work with our partners in the DA's office to bring every offender to justice. We remain committed to protecting First Amendment rights, restoring peace, and holding criminals accountable. I want to thank our officers, our partners in this community for their resilience and cooperation throughout this event. Thank you.
And before we start with questions, I also want to thank the 2 members of my office that have worked around the clock to bring these charges. Alva